Fast and efficient software is great. But without control, speed kills. Security provides the guidance systems. It lowers risk, increases reliability. I'm looking for the ones who know about security, the ones who advocate speed with control. These are the security champions.
My name is Brenton Witonski. I work at OpenText. I'm the product manager for Fortify Security, which is the static analysis side of application security. And so I've been a customer of that for probably 12 or so years before coming on to OpenText and leading the team that's basically deciding where Fortify is going in the future and what we're doing with it.
And how did you get involved with AppSec?
AppSec, so that's a great question. So I've been in the AppSec space for 23 years now. I started out at a college as a developer, working for a cellular company that no longer exists, but started doing that in application just development, and then moved into software configuration management and really securing and building the build processes that develop the applications and create those applications. And that actually led naturally right into securing those applications. And so I started back, I guess, around 2008, 2009, working on securing applications from a static perspective in the development lifecycle and really building application security programs, which I've built at multiple companies now, and just really designing how application security works and at a company.
So you've got this vast experience and you've seen this for over a decade. You've seen how the landscape has changed. Now in 2023, what's probably the biggest challenge when you're trying to implement this or get involved in AppSec?
You know, I think some of the biggest challenges are, making it just a natural part of the process, not making it a separate step or a separate stage. We talk about shifting left and all those kinds of buzzwords around that, and DevOps, devsecops. Really, to me, it's all about engaging security and embedding security into that process and making it a natural flow of that process, not an afterthought or a next step or a separate gate in the software development lifecycle, but really making it part of that software development lifecycle. And the fun thing is over the last 10, 15 years, we keep changing those buzzwords. Mm-hmm. Shift left, shift everywhere. We always keep talking about that DevOps to DevSecOps. There's all these ways we've tried to do it, but essentially the key of all of it is trying to make it a part of the process, not an afterthought or a second thought or outside looking into that process.
It's like the age-old thing that we talk about for testing, performance, functionality, everything. You have to engineer it in. You can't test this stuff in at the end of a life. You have to build it in, which means you have to have a culture of this. You have to have an entire top-down, this is the way our company is going to run.
Yeah, and what I've seen really be successful is when developers help drive that process. When you've got, whether it's security champion type programs or all these different things that we do to try to get more developers thinking security. The most successful things I've seen is when developers really care about it, and you put it out there in a way that they would care about it, and you get them involved in driving those things. That's the success of a program right there.
Right.
You're not fighting. It's not an us and them. It's a community working towards making it better.
I see.
I just had a wonderful company down in Austin, Texas that brought me in to speak to their developers about security. And one of the things that I really pushed out to those developers is how important they are. Development today, applications today, we're a community. It's not just about your company. The vulnerabilities that you write in your company's application today are impacting, thousands, if not millions of people potentially around the world. We're really global. And so I really try to stress to developers to think about the fact that you're not just working for your company, you're part of a global community that's trying to build secure software that ultimately protects all of us.
Right.
And so, just getting us to understand, and we're all on the same team.
I agree.
We're trying to get to the same place.
Completely. So along the lines of the biggest challenges, one of my observations has been you have quality teams whose biggest thing is how do you map defects to requirements and requirements to defects to watch that. Performance, we care about visualization to see the performance problems show themselves easier. So the product that shows us that the easiest with the least amount of clicks wins. Observability, the same thing. We want the least amount of clicks to the visualization. Seems to me one of the biggest challenges in AppSec is you've got all this data with all these vulnerabilities, but a lot of them are false positives, and it's about filtering out what you really don't need to see. Would you agree with that? Like, how do you get rid of the noise?
A lot of noise, especially in my wheelhouse when you're talking about static analysis and things. There's a lot of noise out there. Software composition analysis, even a lot of noise, right? You get thousands of things, vulnerabilities coming back, and one of the key things to think about in application security is you have to have tools. You're not going to scale this manually. You're not going to do things with manual code review. It's not possible. You have got to use the capabilities and the tools that are out there. And there's a lot of great ones out there, but they all have those same problems. False positives, a lot of noise. How do you get down to that? What I challenge customers as well as just development teams, my development teams when I was building those programs, is to let's identify potential areas that we want to focus on. Right, so rather than trying to boil the ocean, rather than getting the latest AppSec tool in there and getting thousands of vulnerabilities and things back, where do we need to focus as a company, as a product team, as whatever, on what matters to us? And I think that's where it comes into understanding what your real risks are, who are the people attacking you, your threats, that threat modeling kind of that concept, understanding what matters to us so that we can maybe focus on a section of the noise. Certain categories of vulnerabilities or certain CVSS scores or certain things that are related to web apps, or if we're doing web apps and we need to focus on web apps, do we have a lot of mitigations in place that protect us from some of the categories of vulnerabilities? Maybe we can put those aside for a little bit and focus on what matters to us. And so I would say really it's all about how do you get that focus? Mm-hmm. How do you narrow all that noise down, all those things into what matters to you? And that's going to be different for every team, every company, every type of application that's out there. And so I also think of layering. When you get multiple layers of application security in place, for example, if I have static analysis, dynamic analysis, software composition analysis, all those things pointing to the same thing, that allows me I've got a real vulnerability there. And so sometimes just using the different tools, or even if you are, I'm always big on commercial software because the freeware, the open source just isn't going to give you everything you need. But I am also a strong advocate of taking those open source pieces and using that to supplement your commercial tools. And so if you go out to OWASP for both SAST and DAST and SCA, software composition analysis, they have lists of hundreds of open source tools out there, all varying by language or whatever. They all have their different strengths, but if I have my big commercial tool, there's nothing that says I can't go take some of these free tools as well, throw them also against, and there's some that are really good at certain languages that can help me supplement or help me focus or narrow down where my urgency is.
Right.
And so that's where, like I said, is figuring out, and I also say those commercial tools, every one of them allow you to tune them. A lot of security teams, a lot of development teams, they miss that step. They expect that tool out of the box to fit perfectly in their environment, and it's not possible.
There's no set template.
There is none. And so really, one of the things that I see that one of the biggest challenges for teams when they're getting these tools is they get these tools and they have this expectation that it's just going to point all the things out for them and without any effort, without any work on their part, and it's just not the case. So I would say when you're thinking about implementing, when you're thinking about doing something and you get a tool, buffer in that time or plan that time that you're going to take to really configure and massage that tool to fit your code, to fit your environment, and configure it in a way that you're going to, I've seen just simple configurations reduce the noise by half. Mm-hmm. Little things of saying, well, this is how my code works. all of the tools allow you to tweak them, configure them, and that's what you really need to spend the time doing that. No tool is just going to magically give you everything you want to see.
Can't be lazy about it. You got to take the time.
You've got to take the time and plan it.
Okay, I think you just alluded to some of this, but you mentioned your experience building a program around AppSec. What are some of the secrets to building a successful and robust program around AppSec? If somebody looks at this and says, I need to do that, we need to get on that right now, what's the first step?
I think the first step is reading your organizational environment, right? Know who the key players are. I've seen so many application security programs fail before they even started because they never got buy-in from their key players, the stakeholders, right? I mean, obviously you're gonna have to get your board, you're gonna have to get your CISO, all those things to get budget and get money. But you also need to understand who are the players in your organization that are going to make or break the success of that program. If you don't have your dev leaders, your dev organizations on board with what you're trying to accomplish and helping them to understand the why of what you're doing, you're going to fail before you even get started. Because the key players in every application security program are the developers who are doing that actual development and their leaders. And so if they have no idea what you're about to do or what you're wanting to do or what you're out there getting budget for, I've seen it. You'll go get all the budget, you'll go get the tools, you'll have this arsenal of the best tools you can have, and then you can't implement it because the people on the ground who you need in that process, they're not there.
I see. And so here's the thing though, it's not like security these days is a nice to have. So convincing them of the why, and if I wanted to be facetious about it, and you developers who don't want to get on board, you're actually the defect creators of these. Your code is where these bugs originate, these vulnerabilities originate. So it's not like they could have a choice, right?
No. But it's true, but if they don't understand the why, I think most developers that I've spoken to and that I work with, they're not evil. They don't hate security. They just have
Sorry.
No, that's fine. They just have a different objective in life. They're trying to create features, they're trying to create functionality, and security always feels to them like an add-on, an additional. It's something else they have to do. But if they understand the why and the importance and the reason why they're so important in that process, you'll get a much higher rate of adoption. All of the headbutting and things that you typically see between security and development teams, a lot of that will go away if you have advocates in development who can speak that language. That's another thing that it's very rare to find. Well, I hate to say it's rare, but it's hard to find good security professionals that can also talk dev.
Right.
And so if you have the average security professional that knows their tools, that knows the vulnerabilities that they're trying to do, but they can't cross and translate that vulnerability into the actual code, developers tend to lose respect for those.
Right.
You're telling me to fix my code and you can't write code. A tool's telling you, how do you know? And so getting advocates that can translate that, getting security-minded developers who are able to take those results and then explain to their other developers, write white papers on things like that actually speak to the code, goes a long way. So getting your advocates, it's funny, security champion programs are usually later on. It's a level of maturity after you. I think getting a security champion program in place early and getting those advocates out there early will go a lot further in making your application security program effective than if you just try to brute force this out there, use leadership. Yeah, we've got risk, you have to do this. If you can get those advocates in earlier, I think your program will be a lot more successful.
All right, last question, and this is the big one. Where do we go from here? What's the future? And I'd like to get your take on the next, say, 3 years for not only the industry and your space, but also open text. Now that Micro Focus is an open text company, where do you see your products going? And also in general, and maybe what's the impact of AI on all of this?
Gotcha, it's a great question. Everybody always want to know what's coming next. I see, from one specific thing I see is more hands-off automation and integration. So, like I said, a lot of these tools that are out there, you get them, you have to configure them. It takes time to get started up, to get going. One of the things, for example, for my product, Fortify, that I see is being able to have automated discovery, being able to point this tool or these really fantastic application security testing tools, pointing them to a repository and allowing them to just discover what's there. So many teams, security teams, development teams that try to implement these things, they often get bogged down in trying to go one application at a time, right? And there's so much value we can gain out of these tools if we were just able to point it at, a bunch of code and allow it to do its work, and then bubble up to us, what did it see? Right. Do you see, one of the low-hanging fruits that I see is hard-coded keys, passwords, things such as that. Why do I need to have, if I have 1,000 applications, why do I have to wait until, I've gotten one application at a time? Why don't I just point it at all 1,000 of them and tell me how many passwords I've got in my code?
Yeah.
That's a huge gap in our industry today. So that's where I kind of see Fortify leading the charge and being able to start more identifying at a global scale across your enterprise and let me focus on categories of risk at a time. Meanwhile, I'm getting the whole application done. I can do a broader perspective and see where those are going. Also, I see now that OpenText has acquired Fortify, I see a lot more opportunity and investment coming down the pipeline. And so, one of the things during the acquisition, OpenText was very, very open about the value they saw in Fortify. It was one of those things where this is one of the reasons that we got Micro Focus. And I think they see that value, they see that potential value in growing and modernizing maybe our tools a little bit more, better UI, those kinds of things, better user experience. And like I said, where I'm thinking of is how do we allow these tools to be more hands-off and allowing it to really get the value quicker, right? Because anytime when they implement these, every product, every application that they implement Fortify on, they see the ROI on that application. I want to start letting them to see it across their enterprise a lot quicker.
I see. And
you also mentioned, AI. What is that coming into play? It's honestly interesting to me to see, a lot of the tools, a lot of the companies out there immediately throwing the word AI in their tools, saying we've got AI doing this. And I would say from what I've seen, it's not really AI, or they're trying to get the buzzwords into their product faster to make it seem like AI. But what I see is as we actually start adding more AI into our tools, I see AI playing a huge role in false positive identification, being able to allow AI to identify. I mean, if you go to ChatGPT, they've already got great examples where they're like, hey, show me the vulnerabilities. And some of that AI is actually showing some results. Now, it's definitely not reliable. It's not stable, but that's where I see it going. I see us being able to pull more things into answering the questions of what is cross-site scripting, right? Rather than having to point them to training or things like that, allow that training just in time kind of a situation there where if a developer doesn't know what a vulnerability is, ask the AI. AI can answer those questions. AI can also, help as it grows, be able to, show me how to fix this, right? And so I see AI being more an add-on to these tools that are bringing back and showing you the vulnerabilities, allowing that education and allowing that, just helping developers find the solutions and help themselves.
And what I've heard people talk about is that AI isn't going to take your job, but the people who understand how AI should be used in these products will probably take your job. That's the threat, right?
Yeah.
But I also hear about AI being from just this generative AI that's fed by this language model that's not very accurate all the time, to moving over to something called causal AI. I don't know if you've heard of this, but it's basically now you're taking good information, only feeding good information into the language model so that when it does present you an answer, it actually knows what it's talking about because you've only fed it good sources.
You're verifying. Yes, absolutely.
So I think that's where we're kind of going next.
Like talking to the village idiot versus talking to the educated.
Somebody who actually knows, the subject matter expert on that.
Exactly.
So that's exciting. And I actually did a podcast when the announcement came out and read all the press releases when OpenText made this acquisition. And it seemed to me that security and the security suite there was of prime importance to that acquisition, even more so than the ADM tools that I'm familiar with. I mean, that's important as well. But it seemed like that was a big focus. So I'm excited to see where they go with this.
Yeah, absolutely. OpenText has really been trying to get that end-to-end security capability, so that they can, whether you're starting out all the way in the cloud deployment, all of your application security, they're really trying to enable customers to secure every part of their business with one platform.
Awesome.
So it's really powerful.
Well, that's great. Good information. Thank you so much for being on the show
Absolutely.
today, and you're welcome back anytime.
Thank you very much, Scott.